Hey guys, Eric Davis from Life Recovery Center. If you watched our previous video, The Monster, then we talked about maintenance that has to be done on the cage that the monster is contained in recovery. So today we're going to talk about what that maintenance actually is. And once again, I'm going to draw some pictures for you, and I know I draw terribly. So let's start out here. And this is, keep in mind, this is all from a 12-step perspective. So what we have here, this is water, okay? And here is this person that may remind you of the individual that was in the belly of the beast. So this individual is out in the middle of the ocean. If you've ever seen the movie Open Water, okay, there's a scene in that movie where the cameraman, obviously he holds the camera and spins around a circle, and there is no land anywhere. There is no land in sight. It is nothing but water. And that's where our friend here is. So our friend is, basically ready to give up hope. And, for some reason, this little current comes along and it pushes him up to the top. So now, just his face is sticking out of the water, and he gets a breath of air. This little ember of hope sparks in the back of his mind, and he thinks, maybe there's hope for me. Maybe I don't have to die. Maybe I don't have to give up. So he says a foxhole prayer, and if you're familiar with that, what that is, that's, hey, if you get me out of this one, I'll do whatever it takes. And that's what he says, hey, look, if you can get me out of this, I'll do whatever I need to do. Please help me. Lo and behold, a giant, great big freighter appears. Okay? And there we go. I'll draw an anchor on there so you know that that's a boat. Gigantic freighter appears. And there's a man on the boat. Okay? The man on the boat yells down to our friend here and he says, hey, what's going on? Are you drowning? Our friend in the water says, well, absolutely. Yeah, I'm drowning. I'm out in the middle of nowhere. Please help me. The guy on the boat says, well, I've got some good news and some bad news. The bad news is the boat's full. We don't have any room. We are full to capacity. The only way I could let you on the boat is to throw somebody else overboard, and I'm not going to do that. But the good news is I do have some boards and some rope that I can throw over the side, and I'll stand here on the side and I'll tell you how to build a raft. And you can follow us to land. That's where we're headed. The man in the water says, oh, absolutely. Yes. So the guy on the boat throws over a piece of rope and he says, hey, this piece of rope here, he says, this piece of rope is fellowship. I want you to hang on to this, because this is what you're going to use to tie this whole thing together and keep it together. The man in the water says, okay. The man on the boat throws over the first board. And he says, hey, this first board is 12-step meetings. Okay? And our friend in the water says, well, what are 12-step meetings? The man on the boat says, think of a war room. When the military's fighting an enemy, all of the generals or, so forth, they gather in a room and they talk about, this is what worked against the enemy, this is what didn't, here's some inside intel about the enemy. He said it's a meeting of a bunch of people getting together to talk about a common problem and to share their experience, strength, and hope. And the guy says, okay, so where are these meetings? And the man on the boat says, they're everywhere. They're all over the place. They're even online nowadays. The man in the water says, okay, well, what do they cost? The guy on the boat says, I'm glad you asked. They don't cost a penny. You can donate money if you want to, but you don't have to. It's one of the only places on earth where if you don't give them a dime, they will say, keep coming back. Okay? The guy says, all right, I can do that. I'll go to some meetings. The man on the boat throws over the second board. And he says, now, at those 12-step meetings, I want you to find a sponsor. And our friend in the water says, what's a sponsor? Is that somebody who's like, going to put their logo on my jacket? And he says, no, 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 not at all. The man on the boat tells him, he says, a sponsor is a guide. It's someone who's been where you're at and can teach you how to do the same thing. And he said, think of it as you're getting ready to walk into a forest that you've never been in. Never, ever, ever before a day in your life. And somebody comes from that forest and they walk up to you and they say, hey, stick with me. I'm going to show you where the berries that are safe to eat are, where the snakes that are going to try and bite you are. I'll show you where all the water is. He said, wouldn't that be great to have somebody that's already been in the forest for a while to be able to show you the ropes? And the man says, well, absolutely. He says, okay, so at the 12-step meetings, find a sponsor. He throws over the third board and he says, this third board is the 12 steps or step work. Okay? And he says, now these things are all building on each other. He says, I want you to do step work with the sponsor that you met at the 12-step meetings. The man says, well, what's step work? And the man says, well, that's working the steps. The 12 steps. That's the actual program. He said, your sponsor will explain it all, but just know that those steps or the 12 steps are a daily program for living. Okay? It's something that we work formally on paper with our sponsor. It's something that we work informally all day long, every day of our lives. It teaches us a new way to live. The man says, okay, I can do that. The man on the boat throws over the fourth board. And he says, now this board here is indispensable. He says, this board is honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness. This is how the program works. The literature tells us with these three things, we're on our way. The man on the boat says, okay, but what does that mean? Or sorry, our friend in the water says, what's that mean? The man on the boat tells him, he says, well, it means I need to be honest about, what's my thinking? Am I understanding the things I'm learning or not? How am I feeling? Am I isolating? Am I planning a relapse in my head? I need to be honest with people that can understand where I'm coming from. And I need to be open-minded to the feedback that they give me based on their own experience. And I need to be willing to take and implement suggestions. And the guy says, okay, I can do that. I can do that. And the man on the boat says, now, here's the fifth board. He throws the fifth board down and he says, now this board is a higher power. And the man in the water says, whoa, 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 hold on. I don't want to hear a bunch of religious stuff. The man on the boat says, no, listen, man, it doesn't have to be that. He says, the only requirement for something to be a power greater than you is it can't be you. And the man says, okay, so what do you mean? And he says, well, if you think about it, left to your own way, you were drowning, and so that was your answer. I'm giving you answers that are coming from outside of you because, your thinking is broken. Your thinking is, there's a problem with it. So I'm here to teach you a different way. So that's what a higher power is. And the guy says, okay, but I'm still having a hard time understanding. The man on the boat says, don't sweat it. In this example, it's real easy. I'm providing you with rope and boards that you did not have before. I'm teaching you how to build a raft to keep you from drowning. So in this example, I'm the power greater than you. And the guy says, okay, all right, I can get that. And then the man on the boat tells him, he says, now, take that rope, and I want you to use the fellowship rope to tie this all together. So the man does, and he says, okay, now fellowship, that is, think of literally a fellowship, like an armada, an armada of boats. And he says, we've those boats fly the same flag, they fight the same enemy, they watch out for each other, they're on the same team. And he said the fellowship is really no different in that way. The fellowship is comprised of people like yourself who are fighting a common enemy, who are trying to learn a new way to live and teach others a new way to live, and they want to help you. So it is a fellowship of individuals who want nothing more in the world than to help you get and stay clean. And the guy says, okay, all right, man, I'll do it. So he climbs up on the raft and he is following the boat to land, and life is good. Life is fantastic. You know, he starts feeling so well. He starts doing push-ups on the boat. He gets some muscles there. There's some biceps. You know, he was bald like me, and he's feeling so good. His hair starts growing. Now he's got, like, you know, Fabio hair. You know, the long locks. Okay, and everything is good. But then something happens. Something happens that, you know, us individuals with substance use disorder struggle with a lot. And our friend starts thinking. And he starts thinking, you know, man, I am so tired of only hanging out with people in recovery. You know, I'm just burnt out. I'm not interested in this anymore. You know, so he unties the fellowship rope and he throws it into the water. So, oh, I'm dropping stuff. So the fellowship rope is gone, all right? Now the boards are just stacked on top of each other. They're not held together by anything. Now, if I don't want to hang out with people in recovery, where am I probably going to avoid like the plague? Well, a safe assumption would be 12-step meetings, because that is full of people in recovery. Full of them. So he stops attending the 12-step meetings. All right, so he takes that board and he throws it into the water. Because he thinks, you know, I am so sick of this stuff. You know, all my friends are going out on the weekend and hitting all the bars and partying, and you know, I'm spending my Friday nights in some random church basement or, you know, online with people that I don't even know, bearing my soul and all this stuff, and I just don't want to do that anymore. Now, I don't know about you, but if you're not attending meetings and you're not fellowshipping, who do you avoid like the absolute plague? Well, probably your sponsor. You know, because what's your sponsor going to say? Your sponsor's going to say, you need to go to meetings. You're not cured. We're never cured of this. This is an ongoing issue. We have to deal with this every single day. You need to be going to meetings. You know, you need to be working your steps. So we stop talking to our sponsor. If we knew how to work steps on our own, we would have never come to the program in the first place. So if we're working steps by ourselves and not with the help of a sponsor, we probably ought to pretty much not be working them at all. So he takes the step work, he throws it into the water. It's gone. Now in this example, he's not being honest about where he started. He's not being open-minded to what the man on the boat said, and he's not willing to maintain the raft that the man on the boat helped him to build. So honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness goes away. And in this example, as we talked about, the higher power was the boat and the man on the boat. He's not maintaining the raft. He's completely doing away with that. He's what we call taking his will back. So higher power board goes into the water. Now what happens when we pull a raft out from under somebody when they're standing on a raft in water? Well, obviously, our friend here, he goes into the water, there's a great big splash, and now this is a big thought bubble. Now he's right back to where he was before, and he's wondering, how did I get back here? How did I get back here? Well, the way that he got back there is a very common problem for those of us who struggle with substance use disorder. And that problem is denial. Okay? Denial. A good way of looking at denial is don't even notice I am lying. The reality is we fool ourselves. We don't understand or we don't notice that we're lying to ourselves. You know, those thoughts of, I don't want to go to a meeting. I don't want to talk to my sponsor. I don't want to do this stuff. Those are normal thoughts to have for anybody who works a program. But we have to understand that the raft is what is keeping us afloat. This happens all the time. A person builds the raft, so to speak. They start doing these things and it's working. But as soon as it starts to work, we start to think, well, I don't need that anymore. Everything's cool now. You know? And that's denial. You know, so always remember, it's what I call the big six. The 6 elements of a 12-step recovery program are, and they build on each other. There's 12-step meetings, getting a sponsor, working the steps with your sponsor, practicing honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness, allowing the answers to come from a power greater than ourselves, aka somewhere outside of us, okay? And then fellowship, making these things a regular part of our lives, building our lives around continuing to do these things, because that's how we keep the raft afloat. That's the maintenance that we do, because no one's raft is ever perfect all the time. We always have to tighten up, you know, one of the knots, or kind of tighten up one of the boards. We don't have to do all of this perfect all the time, but we have to do it. And that's what's important. So I hope this has been helpful. This is the Big Six, and I'm Eric Davis. Thanks for joining me.